Hi there! In this video tutorial we will walk you through how to integrate your Cypress automated test project with TestRail using GitHub Actions and the TestRail CLI. This tutorial is using a simple Cypress project that you can find on the TestRail samples repository on GitHub. So this is my repository on GitHub and it has the sample project here. I have pushed it to this repository and we are going to create a new action to execute the tests from this project. So let's go straight to the Actions tab here. GitHub Actions makes it easy to automate all your software development and testing workflows. GitHub offers a couple of templates for different kinds of technologies, and you can use Actions to build and test your software in a continuous integration fashion, or you can simply create a manual trigger so you can run your tests in an ad hoc fashion. For this example, we are not going to use any of these templates. We are going to set up a workflow by ourselves. I will walk you through this and break down all the steps to achieve our final goal. The workflow is defined in a YAML file, so it has a YAML format. Let's just call this tests.yaml. And now we need to build our file. We have some documentation available right from the GitHub UI to get started. So it shows us how we can customize when workflows are triggered. So we can, for instance, trigger it on the push to a branch, such as main or release, for more sort of continuous integration fashion, on pull requests as well, or we can schedule it to run nightly, even run it manually, so you have a trigger on the UI, on the Actions UI, and you can just press it whenever you want to, for instance, in this case, to run test cases. You can also run the jobs on different machines, so you can run on Ubuntu, Windows, etc. And jobs is one of the main elements as well. You can create one or multiple jobs, and inside each job you can have one or more steps. So let's start building our workflow here. For the sake of this example, we are going to use a manual trigger. I'm going to say that we want to trigger this workflow manually, so on workflow dispatch. And we can also name our workflow, so let's call it UI automated tests. And finally, we need to start building our job. Let's first copy this and then we'll change it to our needs. So we have a jobs block. We can create one or more jobs. In this case, we will only create one job to run tests. I'm going to call the job automated tests and give it a friendly name such as Cypress automated tests, and I'm going to say I want it to run on the latest version of Ubuntu. Next, we need to configure the steps for this job. You just define the steps key, and the steps key accepts a list of steps. In YAML, steps are defined with a dash and then a key and a value, or multiple keys and values. So let's start by defining the steps we want to implement here. The first step will be to check out, because we need to check out our code to execute the test project. The second step will be execute Cypress tests. Then we need to set up Python, because TestRail CLI requires Python to be executed. And finally, we are going to execute TestRail CLI to upload results. Now we have our test steps here, well, not exactly test steps, more like workflow steps here, and we are going to start by implementing the checkout step. GitHub provides actions. Actions are predefined sets of steps that are encapsulated in an action. For the checkout, we can use an action, and we are going to use the checkout action. To do that, we just say that this step uses the actions checkout v3. This will check out the code on this repository to the agent that is going to execute the tests. The checkout is done, and now we can move to execute Cypress tests. We are also going to use an action here to simplify the implementation. And if you actually come to Marketplace here on the right hand menu, you can search, for instance, for Cypress, and you can find the action here. And you can see documentation, the parameters you can use with this action, but I'll just guide you through how to set up for this particular goal. We are going to use the Cypress.io GitHub action, and we are going to use this version. You can define the version you want, and we are going to say that we want to execute this section with a particular command. The command is in the arguments. If you search here, you can see that it overrides the Cypress run command. And for the purpose of integrating with the TestRail CLI, we need to make Cypress generate a JUnit report. That's what the CLI is going to use to upload the results. And to do that, we need to add a couple of custom options. I'm going to add here the command that we need to execute, and we are going to execute the npx Cypress run command. So this would be the default command. And now we are going to add a reporter, which is the JUnit reporter that is going to generate the JUnit reports. And we also need to pass the reporter options, which is going to allow us to create one report for each test suite, because if we don't do this, the test suites are going to override the reports one after another. To not override the reports, we add this hash placeholder here, and this will add a hash to the reports, and then we can merge the reports using the TestRail CLI and send the final results to TestRail. This is all we need from Cypress. It will set up the project and run it. So the next step is setting up Python. If we come to the marketplace again and we search for Python, we can see that there is a setup Python action, which we are going to use in this step. So I'm just going to copy the whole action here. It's going to use action setup Python, and we are going to use the Python version 3.x. This will get the latest 3 version from Python 3. You can also notice that we have a condition here, an if condition, which states that this step will run always. And why do we want this? We want this because even if the tests fail, we still want to set up Python and send the results to TestRail. So we can see that the tests failed and which tests failed. If we don't add this, then this step would be skipped and we wouldn't upload our results. We will also need this for the next step, which is executing the CLI. And now we are going to build our custom command. So here we are not going to use any action. We are going to say we want to run a command. This is like running a shell script in your local machine. And to create a multi-line command, because it's actually multiple commands, we use the pipe. So we are going to start by installing the TestRail CLI with the pip install trcli command. Next, we are going to use the CLI, which has a utility, which is the JUnit parser, to merge the reports. So we are going to use the merge functionality. We are going to find the reports using a glob pattern. The glob pattern will find reports under the folder reports, starting with test, to match what we added on our reporter options. And it's going to join the reports in this path here. And finally, we need to add the trcli execution. So trcli and then -y. -y is used to automatically create test cases and test runs. For every test case that is in the report, we will create a test case in TestRail, and the TestRail CLI will know how to map these test cases in future executions as well, so test cases are never duplicated. Please keep in mind that you need to configure your TestRail project in order to use this, and you can see how to do it in our documentation. So after this, we need to pass in a couple of parameters. These parameters are going to be the host name, so we are going to use this instance for this example, the project name, and then the user and password. In this case, I'm using plain text for this user and password, but we recommend that you use GitHub secrets, and you can still use those values using variables in your workflow. Next, we add the parse JUnit functionality here. This is the functionality we are going to use from the TestRail CLI, and we are going to say that we want to parse our JUnit report at this location, and we are going to also say that we want the title of our test run to be Cypress Automated Tests. As a final touch, we are going to add the workflow execution link to the run description. You build it by using these GitHub variables here, so you can just use this formula and you'll have a link back to the workflow execution straight from your TestRail test run, and this creates traceability from TestRail to your executions in GitHub, so you can, for instance, debug your tests in case something went wrong. Let's save this workflow and see what happens. To save it, we can save it right from here, and we can just say create new workflow, and this is going to commit and push the file to our repository. There we go, we have our file here, we can see the file, we can edit it, etc. And we can now go to the Actions section, and right here we see that there is this workflow. So there is a UI automated test like we defined, and we can see that there is a workflow dispatch event trigger, and we can just run the test by clicking on Run Workflow and then Run Workflow. You can also select a branch if you want to. So let's just run this and see what happens. And it was successfully triggered. Now we just wait a few seconds, and here we go. We have our UI automated test running here, and we have our Cypress automated test job like we defined in the YAML file. And if we open it, we can see the execution logs. So it already checked out the code, and it's now going to execute the Cypress tests. It's now setting up everything it needs to set up. This is done by the GitHub action, the Cypress GitHub action, and now it's running the test using the command that we specified on our YAML file. It's running the to-do interactions file right now. It has a couple of tests and all done. We can see that one test failed, and on the to-do suite every test passed. Now it's already installing the CLI, and the CLI was installed, the reports were merged, and now it's processing the report, and it found 4 test cases in 2 sections. It's now checking the project to see if we have the automation ID field configured, which is the field that you need in your test cases to be able to use a code first approach. Please do check our code first documentation. And it has created the test run, and it has submitted the results, so everything went as expected. And it's now just doing some post execution actions. And now if we go to execute TestRail CLI and we scroll down, we can use this link to navigate to the TestRail instance where the run was created, and we are directed straight to our run. So we can see our results here. We can see that our test failed. It will have the failure message here. Okay, so we can see that we have some information here, but in case we need to further debug this, we also have this link back to the workflow. So if we click here, we are going to end up in the workflow, and we can see all the details here. We can see what happened, we can check the logs, etc. And from here we can go back to TestRail as well. So this is how you integrate your Cypress project with TestRail using a GitHub action. This one is using a manual workflow, but you can also add it to your continuous integration using any other events to trigger your workflow and eventually build an app, deploy an app, and execute your tests against that app. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it was also helpful. Thank you.